Hello again, and welcome. My name is Lori, and today I have Carolyn VanKurin with me. Through our denomination, the Christian and Missionary Alliance, I became acquainted with international workers. I started attending a CNMA church in Hawaii during college, then here at CAC after I got married. We have international workers who visit our church and ladies such as Carolyn who have lived that life of service and attend our church. Carolyn, I've been looking forward to hearing more about your life and your story. Tell us how it all began.
Well, thank you, Lori. I'm very honored to be here this afternoon. And Lori, do you remember a saying that goes like this? Some babies are born with a silver spoon in their mouths.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't. I was born with a passport under my pillow. By the time I was 3 months old, I had traveled halfway around the world with my missionary parents.
Oh.
They were Alliance missionaries in Thailand and going on their first home assignment. And so I'll fast forward because there's so much to tell. But we went back to Thailand after their home assignment, and then it was almost time for me to go to boarding school when World War II broke out. And so we came back to the States, and I had first grade in Lebanon, Oregon, and second grade in Oakland, California, third grade in Southern California. When we went back to Thailand, I went away to boarding school. It was called Dalat School in Dalat, Vietnam. That's north of what they call Ho Chi Minh City now, but it was Saigon in those days. We traveled from Saigon up to Dalat by convoy because there were a lot of rebels who were against the rule of France, who owned French Indochina or Vietnam. And anyway, we traveled by armored convoy, and one time our convoy was actually attacked, but nothing happened to us. The people that were with the convoy were able to take care of the problem with the rebels. Here I was, miles away from my parents, in a foreign country, with people I didn't know, but whom we got acquainted with because they were our dorm parents and our teachers. And actually, I have lots of good memories, but I never got over missing my mother and my father and my little brother. He came later on to Dalat as well. I didn't like breakfast because every day of the year it was oatmeal, cooked oatmeal, not fancy in any way. On Sundays they would give us cinnamon roll after we finished our oatmeal.
Oh.
I like oatmeal, even now. But that was one of the memories that I have that was not so good. I never got over being homesick for my parents. But I did love my teachers and dorm parents, and we were at school 10 months before we were able to go back to our homes some of us from different countries, Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia, Thailand, because they only had the one boarding school. So we were home 2 months and gone 10 months.
Wow.
And then it was time for me to go to high school, and it was time for my parents to have another home assignment. So we came back to the States, and my parents decided that they needed to leave my brother and I in the States. My brother and me. Because the situation was even more tense. And they didn't want to have us in a different country in case war broke out or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So I was placed with an aunt, a single aunt, one of my mother's sisters, and my brother in my dad's sister's home. We weren't even together.
Oh.
And it was for 5 years.
Wow.
Over those important years. When they were in high school, I was in high school, my brother was 11 years old.
Oh, much younger.
So anyway, I tell you all this because it has a lot to do with my call to become a missionary.
Yeah.
I determined when I was in high school I would never be a missionary, ever, overseas.
Mm-hmm.
I told the Lord, because I loved the Lord. I was born again when I was 7 years old, and throughout high school I taught Sunday school. I was faithful to the youth group. I went to every service. Whenever the door opened, I was at church.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not want to be a missionary overseas. I told the Lord, I don't mind if you want me to be a pastor's wife. I'm fine with that. But I don't want the separation from family. Well, I was very, very determined. Was I happy? No. Not at all. I felt convicted because I often felt God calling me to serve Him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was afraid it was going to be overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said no. And I resisted for 4 years. And one evening at church, they had a missionary couple. They weren't Alliance missionaries. They were from Japan. And they spoke. And that night, I gave in. I said, Lord, I'll go wherever you want me to go. I'll do whatever you want me to do. But you're going to have to help me. And I felt like I heard Him say, I will be with you and I will help you. And so I left my aunt and went to New York, where we have the first Bible college that was started by A.B. Simpson, NIAC.
Yes.
And at NIAC, I started preparing scholastically, but I also met a handsome young man who was a Marine veteran, a decorated Marine veteran, who had all kinds of stories to tell of combat in the Korean War. And he had the same vision, the same desire. He wanted a wife, but he wanted someone that would go overseas.
Uh-huh.
And I had already felt the call to go overseas. So we married. We had a baby. We graduated in the same class. We did home service. And then we sailed for Indonesia with our 2-year-old son. on a freighter that had no provision for little children.
Oh.
So we had a harness like you would put on a dog, and had to keep that on him all the time.
With a leash?
Yes,
Yeah.
with a leash.
You hang on to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was very, very active, and all of the crew were afraid that he would go overboard, you know.
Oh my.
I climbed, I mean, the railings were plenty far apart that he could have.
Oh yeah.
It was a freighter. It was not a passenger ship. They
Yeah.
only had 12 passengers.
Uh-huh.
Well, we arrived at the coal pier in Jakarta, Indonesia, Java, the island of Java. And imagine hot, humid, and coal dust flying. We looked very dirty.
Oh.
Black from all the coal dust.
Wow. And then you're sweaty, so all
Yes.
sticks to you. Yeah.
It just stuck to us.
Yeah.
And yeah. Anyway, we were in at first we were in the mountain. It would be a town, but they called it a city. We were in the mountains for 1 year studying the language, and our daughter was born there on the island of Java. And after the year was up, we were appointed to the island of Bali, and that's where we started our ministry. So that's how I got called and how we got sent. The first place was Bali.
Mm.
Bali's religion is different from other islands. Most of the islands in Indonesia are Islam religion. Bali has a unique religion called Hindu Bali, because years back people came down from India and settled in Java, and the Javanese didn't like their religion, so they pushed them off.
Oh.
They came to the next island of Bali, and that's where they settled, and the whole island is, except for a few people that are Islam, the whole island is Hindu with a mixture of Buddhism and animism.
Ah. So that is actually one religion that they combine, the Buddhism, the Hinduism,
and the animism
Okay.
combined. So it's called
Yeah.
Hindu Bali,
Uh-huh.
but it's the only island in the whole country that has that religion.
Okay.
I mean, as the predominant religion.
Yes.
And I don't remember seeing one mosque
Mm.
in Bali
Mm.
at that time.
Yeah.
There probably is now.
Yeah.
Well, the whole atmosphere is deep. It's just really, really like a spirit of depression that you feel when oppression when you
Oppression.
arrive.
Oh.
It's spirit worship. Yeah, it's just, it was that way the whole time. Very difficult. Working with the Balinese, they were wonderful people, but very hard to reach with the gospel.
Mm.
But God helped. We began services in our own house with just 5 people the first time. Our family of 4 and our language teacher, because we still needed to continue with language study.
Mm-hmm.
And we sang, and that attracted the neighbors, and they would ask what we were doing, and then they started coming. And it wasn't very long until our house was too small for the people that were coming.
Wow.
And I started a Sunday school, and they wanted to see these little white kids. And so it just grew.
Mm-hmm. Now, your Sunday school, was it just children or adults?
At that time, just children.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were some things that we did not know, and that was that the communists were trying to take over the government.
Oh.
The government in Indonesia is similar to ours. They elect a president and cabinet members and so forth.
Uh-huh.
But there was a strong communist element that was secretly trying to take over.
Wow.
One thing they did was they made things scarce, like on purpose. Like we needed kerosene to cook with, to light our lamps, because we didn't have electricity to run our refrigerator, because it was a kerosene refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
We needed kerosene, we needed sugar, we needed salt, we needed, things like that.
Yeah.
They were so scarce that if we hadn't had friends that helped us, giving us part of their allotment, we wouldn't have been able to manage.
Wow. So did they withhold it from just your family or across the board?
All across the board.
Yeah,
You'd go
okay.
into a store and there might be one can of something on a shelf. The shelves were just empty.
Wow. Well, we kind of know that with
Yeah.
the COVID thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But really empty.
Yeah.
And we had to take our toilet paper with us to Indonesia.
Oh.
That was something else, trying to figure out how much we would need for 5 years.
Yeah.
For a family of 4.
Oh my.
Anyway, they were planned shortages, and another thing that was really difficult was the Indonesians hated the Dutch because they had been a Dutch colony for over 200 years.
Okay.
And they hated Americans because
Oh.
America helped Indonesia get their independence, but they thought that we were going to take them over on them.
Mm-hmm. They
So-
didn't trust Americans. Yeah.
I could tell you many things that they did. When people talk about discrimination, we were definitely discriminated against. One day we rented a house to use as a church because our house was too small, and Ken got the permission from the owner of the house to gut it, take out the partitions inside so we could use the whole thing for service. And we came to church one Sunday morning, and written right across the top of the building was, "Go home, Americans," So, yeah. But we didn't realize that the communists were planning to take over Indonesia, hold a coup and take over. When we began services in this rented place, an army soldier came to the services. We were a little surprised. He was from the island of Java, and he was a Muslim, but we were kind of surprised. But he came all the time, and he was friendly and participated. And he even invited me to go to the army barracks and have a Sunday school for his children and the children in the army barracks. And I did. And we had children receive Jesus as their Savior, and then the parents started coming to the church also. But the coup, we didn't know it, that the coup was about to be carried out. And so this army officer, kind of in a roundabout way, he said, I think it would be a good idea if you and your whole family went back to the United States for a few months, have a vacation. Well, it just so happened it was we'd been out there 5 years, and it was time to come home anyway for a home assignment.
Yeah.
So we didn't think anything of it, and
Yeah.
we came back to the States. And not long after we got here, they attempted the coup,
Oh.
and it failed. But had we been there, and had the coup been successful, Ken and I and our kids would have been killed.
Wow.
We were on a list. Our names were on a list, and they had eye gougers, and they had all kinds of, plans for what they were going to do, especially to religious leaders.
Oh my word.
We didn't have a clue.
Mm-hmm. And this army officer, he was American? Or
No,
he was
a Javanese
Okay.
from the island of Java.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we returned to Indonesia after a terrible bloodbath there.
Hmm.
Praise the Lord that the communists did not they did not prevail.
Yeah.
And we visited that soldier. He was in the hospital when we came back.
Oh.
And he told us that he was concerned and wanted us to get out before the coup. And he said he had been planted in our church by the Indonesian government to spy on us
Mm.
because they were sure that we were in Indonesia for political reasons
Oh.
and not religious
Uh-huh.
reasons.
Uh-huh.
And he said, I came and attended services and visited with you and visited with others. He said, I was convinced that you were genuine and also that the Lord Jesus is God's Son, and I accepted him as my Savior.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, I tell you, it meant so much to us.
Yes.
Yeah. We were 2 terms on Bali. We went, this coup was at the end of our first term, and the second term, 5 more years. During that time, Ken bought, by faith, we bought a piece of land, built a fairly large church, a youth center, and a pastor's residence in one piece of property.
Mm.
And started 2 more churches in 2 other areas.
Mm.
And God was with us
Mm.
and has been ever since.
Mm.
So after that, we went on another furlough, and that's when we didn't know what we would be doing when we came back. Not that we couldn't go back to Bali, but there were other needs. MAF was flying, Mission Aviation Fellowship,
Uh-huh.
MAF. They were flying in East. Indonesians renamed all the islands and all the cities when they got their independence. So the old name is Borneo.
Okay, I've heard
It's
of
the largest island in Indonesia,
Uh-huh.
and it's divided into 4 different provinces. The Indonesians call it Kalimantan,
Ah.
and Kali means river, and Mantan refers to the monkeys in the forest because it's all jungle and forest.
Oh, wow.
Well, missionaries had been there previously and just all traveled by boat upstream and everything. And Mission Aviation Fellowship was willing to fly to villages in the interior, but they had no airstrips. And Ken had a background with his brothers in building houses and but not airstrips. But MAF, we were appointed to East Borneo, and MAF gave Ken 1 sheet of paper of instructions how to build an airstrip. It had to be you have a crown and so long and so wide and ditches on either side, and every tree had to be pulled out, stump and all, and then all the holes where the stump, where the roots were, had to be filled with rock carried from the river up to the
Hard work.
and hard work, yes. And when our kids were home from school, we all pitched in and helped, but we didn't have money to pay people. We didn't have equipment like you have in the States. And so the Christian villages were still, they still had longhouses. And that means a long house. Half of it for residents, the other half a porch. So it's a long porch, and then the other half divided into family units. So on the long porch you would have services, and then anyway, the governor in Borneo, East Borneo, wanted Ken to teach the Indonesians in the interior how to build single dwellings. So if somebody got sick, the whole longhouse didn't get sick. If there was a fire, the whole longhouse didn't burn down. So, and of course, in the Christian villages, they wanted churches. So they were willing to do all that hard work on the airstrips be repaid by Ken showing them and helping them and telling them and actually showing them how to build trusses, what kind of trees to cut down and how to make the shingles, and how to do it. It was amazing. The women would cook and the men would work hard, and the women worked hard too, and no, we didn't have to pay for anything.
Wow.
Including our own food and lodging. And that was about, in the evenings we would have church services. And that was about all we did the first 5 years we were in East Borneo. But it was a thrill not long ago to get a communication from the president of the Christian Missionary Alliance of Indonesia, who lives in Jakarta. He visited East Borneo and visited one of the churches that Ken had a big hand in helping build. And he wrote and said, thank you, and he said what a beautiful building it was, and he just was so thankful for all that had been done. And one of the reasons I'm relating this story is that I wanted to say to you that anything that we do, if we do it for the Lord, brings honor and glory to Him. It's for His service, even if it's just building an airstrip. But the airstrips were wonderful because Mission Aviation Fellowship could fly their little Cessnas in, and they could take sick people out. They could bring ballot boxes in and bring them back out. I mean, it helped the government, it helped the missionaries, it helped the local people.
Yes. What a service to the people there. Yeah.
Well, we were 27 years in Borneo,
Wow.
and then we came back to the States to retire. Because the Alliance has a policy that when you're 65, that's time to stop. So I just thought I'd relate those incidents to you.
Yes, those are great memories. And I never knew those things. It was so interesting.
One of the things that I did, Lori, besides going with Ken, I didn't always go with him, but when I did, I worked right along with him. But one of the things that I did was work with the women in the city. And women back then were really tied to their homes and their husbands, children, and their, taking care of them. There were a few women that would go to college and become a teacher or a nurse, but those were few and far between. And I had a burden for the women, and also I wanted them to be able to serve the Lord. And so I encouraged the women. I said, I'd like you to go with me, now that we have airstrips, and fly into an airstrip way upstream to a Christian village and teach the women in the village. Like, for instance, a nurse could teach health, nutrition, what to do if their children have this disease or that. And a teacher could have a Bible study for the women, and just different ministries according to their abilities, their talents.
Yeah.
And they got all excited. But then they said, but we can't. Our husbands would never let us go. And really, that was the way it was. But I prayed about it, and I asked the Lord to help me, and I went and talked to the husbands, not with their wives, but alone. And I said, this would be a wonderful thing for your wives. They could serve the Lord, and you'd have a part in it, because you'd be taking care of the kids at home, you'd be and praying for them. And so whatever they do, you would have a part too. And took quite a bit of talking before they decided, well, maybe. And when one said yes, then another said yes. And so we had teams of women. And, about every 6 months, I would take a team of women into the interior. We would go to the Christian village farthest upstream that had an airstrip. And then that village would take us downstream to the next village. And so we let them know ahead of time we would be coming. And we would visit 4 or 5 villages and then be picked up downstream by MAF. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful for all of us, for the ladies, for the villagers, for the husbands. The husbands were so proud when we arrived back.
Oh, how neat.
They said, they were just smiling, we did it, we didn't have any trouble with the children. It was really wonderful.
Wow.
We probably don't have time to tell you, but we visited other villages that were not Christian villages also. And had people converted. It was really great.
Wow. Oh my, the stories you could tell, Carolyn.
I have a lot of them.
Have you written any down?
Just in my head.
Oh.
Maybe sometime I will have time to get them organized.
Well, this is the beginning, and that's great. Because, your stories are like stuff I've read in novels. So I'm even more impressed with you and Ken. That's great.
Well, it's not us, Lori. It was the Lord's, I tell you. If I hadn't felt God had called me, and if I hadn't felt that He was with me, and as He promised, I will help you, I could never have done it.
It's true, isn't it, with the Lord?
Especially when it came time to send our children off to school. That was...
They had to go to boarding school too.
When I was a kid, there was no homeschooling, no nothing.
Right.
But when our children were school age, we could have taught them, but it wouldn't have been the best thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wouldn't have been able to do what I did.
Yes.
And the Alliance considers husbands and wives both missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
God gives the grace.
Mm.
It's only Him.
Mm. Wow. Well, tell us how you came to Canby Alliance Church.
Well, we came here because when we retired, both of our children were living in Canby.
Oh.
So it was a very strong drawing.
Yes.
Point.
Yes.
Yes. They are not living in Canby now, but they're not far away, so we can
Right.
still
Yeah.
see them.
Yeah. Oh.
When I was a teenager living with my aunt, it took a minimum of 2 weeks to get a letter to my parents, and if they answered immediately, 2 more weeks before I'd get an answer back.
Mm.
No phones,
Mm-hmm.
no internet, of course.
Yeah.
And the only way you could, if there was an emergency, you could send a telegram, but that was very expensive. So,
Mm-hmm. You were really separated from them. Yeah.
and then with our kids too, we were on different islands. And then when they went to high school, they were in Penang Island in Malaysia. So we didn't, but we got to see them twice a year, not just once.
Mm-mm-mm. But then, was it still just letter writing?
Yes.
Not too many phones? Not
No.
yet, yeah.
We waited 17 years for a phone when we were moved to East Borneo.
Oh.
We finally got one, but
Uh-huh. Oh, wow. Yeah,
Our-
because you were out in the
yeah,
interior.
yeah.
The forested. Wow. Hard to imagine.
Well, the phone was in what they call a city. It was on down closer to the coast, but they didn't have cell phones either
Right. Oh, yeah.
until after we left.
Oh. Yeah. Radio, maybe?
Radio, yes.
Yeah. Wow. We forget.
TV, internet.
Yeah. No.
They have everything now.
Oh,
but-
yeah. I know. But not
not
then.
then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you have any other memories you wanted to share with us? If not, any parting words for us?
Well, I think I've got lots of memories, but I think I will save them for another time.
Okay. Well, and you've shared some great ones already.
Well, some other parting words. I was just going to mention, that God has given each one of us, everyone, talents and spiritual gifts. And I'd like to encourage everyone to use them. Pray and ask the Lord what spiritual gifts He's given you. I prayed for years. I never, you read them in the Bible, but I didn't have any of those that you read. What I felt always was that I had the gift of helping, but it doesn't say in the Bible helping.
Mm.
Not necessarily initiating, but helping. I have had people tell me that I am a motivator and I'm an encourager, things like that, Well, whether they're spiritual gifts or just something God has given you to do, given you a specialty in, the important thing is to use it for the Lord. Not for yourself and not just for your family, but and I'd like to encourage everyone that is listening to me today to use those gifts. Now, I'll use as an example, Lynn Olson plays the piano or the keyboard, and she sings, and the recordings that she has done have been a wonderful blessing for me. I can listen. Maybe I can watch and listen, but at least I can listen while I'm doing things.
Yeah.
And it's such, just lifts my heart. She's using that for the Lord. I used to be a good person to send cards and letters. Now, not so much. Not that I don't want to, but just the time it takes. But being a listening ear also when people want to talk. Sometimes we're half listening and half thinking of what we want to say. There are many ways that we can serve the Lord, but I find that people are, even now, maybe more so now, that COVID has been with us. People are lonely, and people are hurting. And so this is just something that I try and do when I'm in a grocery store and get up to the cashier. If I notice that they seem to be tired, I'll mention it and say, you know, something nice to them and something to encourage them. If I see people in the store, I try and talk to people. Even I don't have to know them. I don't have to be in such a big rush that I can't just pay attention, a little bit of attention. And if they respond, then more. But if they don't, at least a kind word. When I was in East Borneo and our neighbors were devout Muslims, I made it a point to say, isn't God good? This is what he did for me today. And that often opened up an opportunity to talk and witness. And I've been trying that here too. And it works. You might find another fellow Christian, and you might not. And you might find somebody that's anti. But my goal, because I'm not a Billy Graham, and I'm not a Pastor Tim, and I'm not a Bible teacher or anything, but to smile and pay attention to people and their needs, and listen, really listen, and try and put myself in their shoes. I think it's worth it. And I have been a shy person all my life, and so it's not easy for me to do that. It's easy to talk to somebody you know, but to talk to somebody you don't know is not so easy. But God is with us, and he helps.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate that word, because that's something all of us can do to some degree in different ways.
Yes. Yeah.
And like you say, with God with us, he guides us. And so, well, I hope that you enjoyed this time together. It was very interesting for me. I did not know these things, so I'm so glad that I was able to spend this time with Carolyn, and I hope that you enjoyed it too. Thanks for listening.